The dark side of living in London. London is such a city with a brand name, a marvellous city where things are working. For those who love a decent city with all amenities of life and still serves as an industrial and cultural centre, London, the capital and largest city in England, in the southeast is a city to consider. The metropolitan city near the mouth of the River Thames in England has the loyalty of residents and others dreaming to taste the modest way of life in this exemplary European city. Oh, my London. Yet, this is not to propose that everything about London is just fine. The dark side of London, if spotlighted, may scare conservative individuals away from the city. Okay, as good as the city is, let me show you the dark side of London in this video. 1. Racism. To be fair, the United Kingdom and its capital London cannot be on any credible list of the world's worst countries and cities for racism. Nevertheless, the city is having its fair share of contention with this societal ill, perhaps as a spillover from the United States situation. Even without the stats, Londoners tend to be unfriendly at times, maybe due to the city's stress. It seems that strangers aren't so much loved. It may not be pleasant to be around core Londoners. This can sometimes be mistaken for racism, but it's not always due to racial discrimination. That's just London for you. If, however, anyone thinks London is completely free of the menace, perhaps they should start looking at the government's own figures between the line. You'll then have an idea of social injustice and inequality, and faced by black and minority ethnic groups in London and the entire country. While the authorities officially don't approve of racism, traces of ethnic and racial inequalities taint employment spread, housing graphs, and the justice system. Why would thousands of Britons, including Londoners, join the Black Lives Matter protest not so long ago, even after the government appealed to the people to stay home? If you see it that way, it indicates that decades of racism have eroded the public trust in institutions. Reporting on this, CNN once exposed how Britain has failed to deal with systemic racism. This is one of the negative sides of living here. 2. The weather can get depressing. The London British weather. If you're moving to London, please don't forget your brolly. That's on the lips of everyone living in the city because it rains a lot. And the weather in this city can change abruptly, from boiling, scorching to torrential downpours, hail, wind, at the drop of a hat. It can sometimes make moving around particularly difficult and depressing. But that's why Brits living in London are so obsessed, and you'll soon get used to it and enjoy it. After all, Britain's not known as a green and pleasant land, right? Thanks to the weather, the city gets watered regularly, and once you get the hang of having your umbrella with you at all times, you won't even think about it again. Even then, the city does have some wonderful weather. Yep, summertime in London can be glorious. Imagine temperatures regularly hitting 80 degrees Fahrenheit, or even beyond on some occasions. You've got to take advantage of those occasions and hit one of those wonderful parks in London for biking, walking, or picnicking. Enjoy the good weather while it lasts, as things can be depressing on other days. Little wonder why Londoners are rushing outside to make the most of the sun's appearance before the grey overcast skies take over. 3. The cost of living is high. Seriously, this is a dark side of London. Everybody admits that living in the city is pricey. Of course, the same can always be said about any big or capital city. Nevertheless, though, London can especially get you jaded or avaricious. You may be in the top 10% of the worldwide income range and still feel poor as a London resident. You may have to lay out a lot to survive in a small flat and commute to work, such that you're left with what little that you won't take you far when you have to factor in the cost of eating and drinking. When newly moving to London, try not to do currency conversion when you spend. Otherwise, you'll feel like you're blowing an average person's weekly wage on just one meal. You'll also see people getting well along with a fraction of your budget. While London is undoubtedly not the cheapest place to live, it's nonetheless not the most expensive when you compare other European cities vis-à-vis wages. The pays are higher in London than in many other cities in Europe, and London pays the highest in the UK. This should counteract the higher prices and make living in London more affordable. And if you can live in less central areas such as Brixton, Camden, Hackney, Maida Vale or Walthamstow, you may also be spending less. 4. London can be dirty. I want to resist the urge to add this. I don't want to join London critics who insist that London is dirty. After all, it's not dirty when compared to many other major European and North American cities. I dare say it's far cleaner than New York and Paris, being constantly cleaned. Although the cleaners have to cope with limited bins in central London, no thanks to the threat of terrorism. However, When you wake up in the morning and find that foxes have scattered all over your pavement the rubbish inside your bins, who won't say that the city's dirty? The city's huge rat problem is one of the reasons why it's considered dirty. You can't argue that a rat-infested community is clean. Living or working in London for 6 months, you must have seen at least one rat scuttling down a street. Unfortunately, though, these rodents are a health hazard, as they're carriers of disease. What about air pollution, though? Check your hanky later in the day and those black bits under your fingernails, and then form your own opinion. Air pollution is becoming a matter of great concern for the city. It's reported to contain dangerous levels of toxic air due majorly to road traffic, construction industries, and wood burning. Even the smell in the tube can sometimes be nauseating. Yes, London is one of the world's most hygienic cities to live in or visit, and it's also one of the dirtiest destinations in Europe. 5. Surveillance is a constant. The UK authorities are concerned about crime and criminality, and they're determined not to leave any stone unturned. There's a good reason for this to be. They ordinarily shouldn't be a dark side of living in London. I want to consider London safer than most of the world's cities, yet there have been pockets of the subject of terrorist attacks in the past, and the threat of terrorism is still here and there, and same with street crime. Here's the not-so-good news. If you live long enough in London, you'll probably experience something, either minor or major, bearing semblance to crime. Phone snatchers, pickpockets are still operating. There are stories of bags being nicked from under the restaurant tables while owners are relaxing. Pilferers are also reported at stores. To combat this, CCTV cameras are installed everywhere. Therefore, you have some level of confidence that anyone trying to put in harm's way is being seen somewhere, somehow. This serves as a deterrent for crime. However, that's not convenient in this world obsessed with freedom and privacy. In fact, London is reported to be the most spied upon city on Earth. It has the most CCTV cameras per square foot. Well, I'm not about to scare you away from London, but the fact that your privacy is not all that private, you're being watched. In addition to that, though, there's heavy police presence everywhere in London. Too much. Yes, it's in the interest of your safety. You're not likely to be assisted to control a major incident. 6. Traffic is crazy. London Bridge had better not fall down, as it's being rhymed for nursery kids. For anyone born and bred in a city without traffic congestion, the dark side of London is the crazy traffic. The daily commute is hell for many Londoners. If you'd ever experienced one of those signal failures and congestions on the lines, you won't want to see it again. The supply of more trains has done just a little to ameliorate the situation. If you're in central London, you'll see the effect of overcrowding on the traffic. There's no way around it. There has to be an efficient public transport system with lots of vehicles and trains to enable everyone to move around 24/7. Thanks to the buses, the tube system, and overground trains, among others. You spare yourself this traffic stress if you don't have a car, as there's absolutely no need to own one. Life in London can be really exciting, but also exhausting. However, you must be ready to give up a lot before you decide to leave the city. At the same time, though, you have to make sacrifices many times while remaining there. So, there's a dilemma. The downside of living in London repels you, but London is also a city of opportunities and a haven for job seekers and explorers. Thanks for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe, comment, and turn on the notification bell.